Naturally enough, I want to acknowledge the results of the election in Nigeria, an extraordinary transition to democracy, and a gracious concession speech from Goodluck Jonathan, now the former president. Actually, the first stitch of leadership he showed in his entire dismal tenure. So we now have President Buhari in place with a very significant job ahead of him. After all, it's been 55 years since independence with a preponderance of military rule. He's better off, though, than many of the countries around him, where the various presidents feel that they should live and rule for eternity. Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kenya, probably Tanzania. They all think that they are consistent with eternity. But Buhari doesn't have that kind of time. He's faced with a dismal economic situation because of the drop in the price of oil. Did you know that oil constitutes 70% of the income source, revenue source in Nigeria? And of course, he's got to deal with the endemic and constant corruption of the country. But most of all, he has to deal with Boko Haram. Now, interestingly enough, Boko Haram has been pushed back in the last couple of months because of the forces from the governments of Chad and Cameroon, and also some pushback from the forces in Nigeria, supported by, you're not going to believe this, South African mercenaries. Now, what has the international community come to that we have to have South African mercenaries deployed in order to subdue the carnage induced by these militia extremist groups? But of course, it's not just Boko Haram. As I am recording this, I'm watching the BBC reports of that terrible assault by al-Shabab, I guess it is, on northeastern Kenya. BBC is now reporting at least 70 students killed in the massacre that followed. How do we deal with these extremist groups? The world seems largely impotent, but there is something afoot which is promising. I can remember it back in my own days at the United Nations. There are talks in the corridors of the UN, particularly amongst the developed countries, of creating a standing, permanent UN emergency force which can be rallied to the cause of any convulsive intervention of the kind that's exhibited either by Boko Haram or al-Shabab. Boy, do we need them. When you think of it, this month represents the first year anniversary of the abduction of the Chibok girls from northern Nigeria. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.